everyone, this is Literary Freak 11, and I have today my wrap-up for the month of June, and so I read a total of 8 books, 2 audiobooks, and 6 physical books, and so this was kind of a bad reading month for me. I kind of wasn't in the mood to read a lot. I did a lot of writing, which was good though, so I'm not too unhappy about it. I finished 2 audiobooks. I was not really in the mood for audiobooks, especially because the first one, Secret History, was 22 hours long and it took up a lot of my time, and I just felt afterwards like I just couldn't start anything. And basically this book is about this Greek club or this class at university, and basically the professor is like, you should take almost all of your classes with me if you're going to be in this major. And this guy, Richard, kind of joins later. Everyone else, he transfers in, everyone else knows each other and stuff like that. And he starts uncovering this, these secrets, and gets involved in this whole plot. In the very beginning that one of the characters, Bunny, dies, and you don't quite know how. And I think it's interesting because his death is actually in the middle of the book, and then afterward, the whole second half is just, the repercussions from it. And I honestly really enjoyed it. I don't know that I could have gotten through it if it weren't an audiobook. The narrator actually is the author who voices all of the characters kind of in the way that she imagines them, and I thought that was a really strong point. Again, it is really, really long, but the characters are so deep and intricate, and they're not hard to keep track of, and I just loved this book so much. I gave it 4 stars. The second audiobook that I read was The Fragile Ordinary, and it's about this girl who has massive, massive social anxiety. A cute, hot American boy comes in there in Edinburgh or somewhere in Scotland, I think, and the narrator's accent is beautiful, and I think that's one of the only reasons I actually managed to listen all the way through this book, because there were parts that really just irritated me. She has this quote above her bed that's to thy own self, be putting herself out there, and so she's like, but this is me just sitting in bed and reading and whatever, and not living life, and so hot American boy Tobias kind of pulls her out of it, but then she ends up kind of in his whole drama and family situation and why he ended up moving out of America, and they end up dating, and they are kind of a cute couple, and I do like them, but there are a lot of points that are really cringy, and being true to yourself doesn't mean staying in your comfort bubble. And her parents are both artists who are kind of famous and who basically ignore her because they love each other more than they love her. And one of the days, her dad is like, I only wrote 50 words. I'm like, you put indie authors to shame. I'm on a page of indie authors, and I watch them write, thousands of words every day. And, I'm not saying all big authors do this, but I feel like it is a common thread that a lot of them do. Kind of have this luxury where they can have a day where they write only 50 words. It's ridiculous. Anyway, the first physical book that I finished was Once Upon a River by Diane Setterfield, and this book was so in-depth. I love the theme of the river. It kind of starts off using the river as a metaphor for something that's going to happen in each chapter, or locating where on the river this is happening. There are 3 girls that have gone missing at different points, and this one girl shows up, and they're kind of trying to figure out who it is, who it belongs to, who the parents are, and so you kind of uncover all of these stories from all of these different people about where this girl came from. And honestly, this book was a little bit of a drag for me. I think I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was hard to get through, but it was really rewarding, and the imagery was very beautiful, so I enjoyed it for that reason. The next book that I read was Warrior of the Wild, and that is a young adult book about this girl who's been training to be a warrior. You basically train until you take this final test that determines whether you can be, and they basically let you in this maze with these poisonous creatures that they're fighting that are fantastical, and you basically have to kill at least one in the allotted time and not get bitten. And those are the only two requirements. So they train with axes. And I actually really like Trisha Levenseller, but I feel like I enjoy her in a trashy sort of way because her characters are such Mary Sue's and the women do things. Like, a woman would not best a man at an axe fight in general. And they're like, oh, because she's the daughter of the chief or whatever, she's the best. No, that's not how female strength works. So I enjoy her characters, but like I also have trouble suspending reality for some of the things that her characters do. So there is that. However, basically she fails her trial because this guy that she thought liked her was really using her because they were jealous of her being a woman and being so good. And so she gets banished, and so they give her this impossible task to kill this god, and then she'll be reinstated, and basically she meets two other guys who are also banished and doing their impossible tasks, and yeah, they have to work together in order to get back to their villages. The next book I finished was The Nakano Thrift Shop, and although this was a short book, it was just such a terrible book. Like, there's this whole thing of, oh, it's so artsy and whatever, and no, it was so bad. None of the characters except one had any personality, like, at all. Basically, it's about this fictional thrift shop run by this guy who's kind of flaky and weird, and these two people who work for him, and the owner's sister is also a main character that comes in fairly frequently. I think would have enjoyed it much more if stories were told about the customers, like through the objects that they were buying, like what attracted them to people and stuff like that. And the thrift shop eventually closes, but like there's no cohesive thread except this sort of weird kind of romance between the two employees that's like, I mean, he's asexual and he can't like quite communicate that to her. The next book that I finished was The Princess and the Fangirl. This was a 5-star book. I enjoyed this so much, and I have not read Geekerella, which I definitely recommend because it makes a lot of allusions to Geekerella in this book. And basically it's about this girl who looks a lot like the famous actress who plays the main character on Starfleet, and so they end up swapping places by mistake because a stagehand mistakes her for this famous actress, and she ends up needing her for a mission, and they switch places, and it's just such a fun, lighthearted book. Like, I love reads like that, and I forgot how much I loved reads like that. The next book that I read was Cersei, and I will say that it was, although I thought it was a good book, I did not think it was as good as the hype. And so basically it's about the goddess Cersei and her past growing up under her father's shadow, and, you know, kind of being the forgotten child because she's part nymph, but she's not pretty. So she ends up having to be smart, and she gets exiled for something or another, for using magic. Because she turns a mortal that she's in love with into a god, and then he ends up becoming cocky and like leaving her basically. And it is really interesting, her story and all of the aspects, but it did drag in certain places. I just wish that there were a more underlying storyline. But, you know, it's fun to kind of recognize and be like, oh yeah, I remember that, or I know about that. The last book that I finished this month was Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. And oh my goodness, did this one live up to the hype? Like, I've not heard anything bad about this book so far, but Doomslug is absolutely wonderful. I really enjoyed her, I guess, and I really enjoyed the whole book. The beginning I thought was like a little bit slow, but I was still interested to know what was happening in the world. Normally I think academies, like she goes to flight school, but her challenges to get there are also really interesting. And normally I hate schools, academies of any kind, except for like Harry Potter, except for Hogwarts, because I think they're boring and they're often not done well. And you know what I mean? The conflict is very internally focused, but this I absolutely loved. It was so good. Highly recommend it. And yeah, I think that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow me on all my social media. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.